Are you a manager who is eager to change the trajectory of your career? I have spent the last 23 years as a Fortune 50 leader learning from other industry leaders how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. On the Might in Motion podcast, we focus on the 4 M's: motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. We bring you leaders from Fortune companies, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Their stories of living their own might in motion will inspire you to create your own action plan and achieve your goals. Welcome to Might in Motion. Today's episode of Might in Motion is brought to you by Pantheon FM, Fortunes Magnified. Pantheon FM is changing the world through entrepreneurship. In this community, you will find everything you need to create, amplify, and monetize your world-changing business. Join us at pantheon.community/register/LAUA. I am so pleased to bring to you today Omar Halabieh, who is a global tech executive with 20 plus years of experience. He is currently Director of Technology at Amazon Payment Services. Omar is also a leadership development and career growth mentor and posts daily on these topics on LinkedIn. Omar, welcome to Might in Motion.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. Super excited.
I am too. I've been really looking forward to this. You are really big on LinkedIn. You always have fantastic content that I follow you because I glean something from it every single day. But that's not really where you started, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your career path and what you've been doing over the past 20 years and maybe how that
Sure.
led you into LinkedIn and sharing all
Sure.
the nuggets?
Awesome. So yeah, so my background is in computer science. I have both a bachelor's and a master's, and my career in that respect started out in Canada. My first role, I joined an energy company called Direct Energy. I started out as a senior analyst there on the software development side. I was part of a 2-year leadership development program, so I had an opportunity to kind of rotate different roles, different functions, different locations. So it really gave me a breadth of overview of a lot of how a large company operates in that respect. And then after the end of that program, I basically took on a more permanent role within their upstream and wholesale energy division, actually based in Houston. So I relocated to the US at that point. And then I kept working there in different roles, different departments again, and then slowly transitioned from an individual contributor to team lead to then a manager. And so I spent about 7 or 8 years there. And then the opportunity came to work for Amazon. And so I moved to Seattle and I joined Amazon's supply chain optimization technologies group as a senior technical program manager. And then from there, I learned that I really enjoyed management. So after a few months, I then rotated back from being an IC to again being a manager as a software development manager, still within the same kind of organization. And then, through there, worked my way up from manager to senior manager. And then about 4 or 5 years in, the opportunity to move to the Middle East here in Dubai on the back of an acquisition that Amazon made of a company called the Souk Group here and launched their sort of e-commerce business in the region. It came up. And both from a professional perspective as well as a personal perspective, seemed like a great fit for me at the time. So I took that opportunity and then moved all the way from Seattle to Dubai. And I've been in this role now for almost 5 years. And since then, I've also been promoted to director of software engineering on the back of the work that we've been done here. So that's kind of in a nutshell my journey, starting out from when I started my university studies in Canada, leading me all the way back to Dubai here. Yeah.
That's awesome, and I think it really shows, at least for me, that you're willing to take some risks. You're moving countries repeatedly,
Yeah.
different parts of the same country. I mean, Texas is very different
Sure.
than Washington State, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes as you move up in your career, you take laterals, or you have to actually get really out of your comfort zone and move physically to make those opportunities happen.
Yeah.
Um, Throughout that process, when did you really realize, and you said, hey, you realized you liked being a manager, you liked being a leader. What was that moment that really had that shift in your mind that you're like, oh, I actually like this part. I like being more than just an individual contributor. There's nothing wrong with being an individual
Sure.
contributor. So nobody take it that way. But what was that mindset set shift for you?
Absolutely. I think I've had several of these moments, but there's one moment in particular that's kind of like cemented my leadership journey, if you will. Early on in my career at the energy company I was working within, we had just delivered like a major transformational program related to how we manage our energy assets, and I was at the time the technical lead for that program. This was a complex program, many different partners outside the company, many different teams inside the organization. Project we've been working on for over a year. 30 plus people inside the organization involved, many more outside, etc. And we did really well in that project, and it was actually nominated for kind of the highest award at the company level. And so I remember specifically that moment when we were essentially invited to almost like a gala, if you will,
Mhm.
celebrating all the great projects that were nominated across the company that spanned over 6,000 people. So it was a large event. We actually won the award, the platinum award at the time for this project. I remember as we were setting to go on stage, one of the team members who was part of the project that I was leading, he came up to me and he said, Omar, thank you for having me on the team. You helped me achieve something I didn't think I could ever do. And so those words from that day, kind of, maybe this was more than 13 years ago or so, if I
Mhm.
had to recollect, but I can't never forget those words, and sort of the smile on his face, the sparkle in his eyes at that moment really made me believe of like how much impact great leadership can have. And so that's kind of for me cemented the moment that said, hey, this is something not only am I really enjoy doing, but I'm also super passionate about.
I love that because and I don't think everybody realizes, especially if you're a new manager, how much of an impact you have to the
Yeah,
people that are in your stead. You
yeah,
are who they talk about at the dinner table with their family and with their friends. And um, when you can create an environment where that person feels inspired, wants to be part of that team, feels they're being elevated, like you mentioned on the story, this person was said, hey, I achieved more than I ever thought I could because
yeah,
of your leadership. That's awesome. You want to be on that end of the spectrum, not
yeah,
the other end of the spectrum where it's, you're the bane
totally,
of everybody's existence, right? So
totally.
um, I love that. Did you have good leaders that you had like learned from that really helped
Absolutely.
inspire you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all surrounded by great leaders, and listen, not there isn't a single person that's perfect by any means. And
Mhm,
so what I always, my motto has always been in terms of, how do you learn something from everyone? And sure, there are people that are closer to, let's say, your style and how you lead, and maybe you gravitate more towards those because they're more similar to what you do. But you also learn a ton from other leaders, even though you may, in some sense, disagree with some of the ways that they achieve things or do things in their own way and their own style. I really think I've learned to embrace like the authentic leadership mentality in terms of like there's no one set right way of leading. There are multiple ways of leading, and I feel like learning from a lot of these different styles and then adapting and sort of incorporating elements of that to find your own unique style is probably one of the key difference makers, I believe, in terms of anybody's effectiveness as a leader.
that makes complete sense to me, and at some point along your journey, you were inspired to write, and you wrote, "Leadership in 60 Seconds." What
Yeah,
inspired you to write this book and, be one of the few that actually put pen to paper and get things something published, and what's one thing from that book that you think a new leader can really glean and take with them today?
sure. So I think as we've been talking about, quickly realizing that the disproportionate impact that really effective leadership can have, not only on our own careers, but also of those around us. That said, I think there are three primary challenges when it comes to leadership development that at least, continue to be front of mind for me. I think the first one is really making the time to develop the skill set. We're all very busy. We have many commitments, both to the organization, to our team, etc. So really finding that time for ourselves to develop is a struggle. Number two, I think, is how do you receive, practical guidance versus ones that are in some sense theoretical in nature? Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, and we need to understand, like, how do you apply these things in various contexts, and things are always nuanced in that respect. And then number three, kind of building on that point, is being able to get diverse perspectives, because no matter how effective of a leader you are, that's just one perspective that you get. And since you're dealing with people, I think the most effective leaders are ones that are able to hold diverse perspectives and tools to manage situationally. So I think when I put these kind of three things together, I really felt sort of both inspired and passionate about developing a resource that can help, aspiring leaders or even experienced leaders get better. And so first it started out with a mini video series called Leadership in 60 Seconds. And they were really just 12 videos of less than 60 seconds of practical tips. And then I evolved that to essentially writing it in a book, together with all the insights and inputs from the folks that really reviewed the content and interacted with it and added their own perspective. And since then, over 1,000 people have essentially downloaded this book. And then we've started, in some sense, a community. And I have a
Mhm.
biweekly newsletter that I sent to the audience to really share bite-sized leadership tips, insights from others, reflections and exercises to do to really help leaders on their continuous development journey.
I love that. It resonates with me. I have a kind of a similar style. When I wrote my book earlier this year, I did it the same similar way, in that I wanted small bite size. I didn't want to write another two, 300, 400 page leadership book. We've all read
Yeah,
them, but I
yeah,
wanted something that people could actually take action. And so your series inspires people to take action. Your book inspires people to take action. And I love that, because if you don't take action, you stay exactly where you are.
yeah,
You can't get to
absolutely.
where you want to go without some kind of movement, right?
Absolutely. And then I think for example, in one of the chapters, we talk about sort of what's one question that could either be asked in a mentorship session,
Hmm.
or even it could be asked as a means of self-reflection. And you talked at the opening around sort of the mindset. And one of the questions that I had written, and there's a lot of great suggestions also from the audience, but in some sense, it's asking what makes you think that. I think
Yeah.
this probing question really helps us uncover underlying assumptions that we may have, and how that's shaping our mental model around a certain perspective, and an ability to really dive deeper and figure out whether we need to make an adjustment there or not. So, yeah,
That's a great question just to have in general, right? So not only self-reflective, but when you get feedback, sometimes that feedback is, instead of a clarifying question, or a great clarifying question, would be, well, what makes you think that? All
yeah,
right. So what makes you think that I'm either doing well in a scenario or maybe not so well in a scenario? So I love that.
exactly.
You mentioned at the beginning too that you are, I think, a LinkedIn wizard. I mean, I see your content daily. You're out there sharing these bite size, pieces of information. You're creating a community around that. What what was one of your big aha moments around this content that you're sharing, and this influence that you can have to help drive that positive mindset, because
Sure.
you are creating a very positive community.
I appreciate that. So I think for me, really, it started. I've always been thinking in the back of my mind, how can I scale my impact
Mm.
even beyond the boundaries of the organization? And then sometime late last year, it's almost coming up to a year now. I think it was in November when I thought, okay, I had some, vacation time planned, and I finally said, hey, I want to actually, since this is a passion of mine, I want to put it in action. And so I started writing, and then for the first maybe month or two or whatnot, I wasn't writing as consistently in terms of daily, but I started to write. And initially, my intent was primarily around sharing what I know. And then, little did I discover soon enough that actually I'm learning a lot from the interactions that I'm having and what other people that are engaging with my content are sharing. That's number one. And number two, the network of professionals that you
Mhm.
develop as a result of that and the diversity of perspective that that brings, I think is tremendous. And I always say that, for example, within the organization, no matter how large the organization is, we all have some, let's say, shared mental models around how we think about things and whatnot. So it's always good when you get perspective from outside the organization and how much that enriches your own perspective, regardless of what kind of companies these other folks are working in, regardless of levels, job functions, whatever else. There's just a lot to learn.
Mhm.
And so that to me has been a super enriching part of that in terms of learning. And then the second part, as you rightfully said, in terms of the support that you get, oftentimes like you may be struggling during the day, maybe you're low on energy, maybe you faced a difficult situation or had a difficult meeting. I feel always uplifted when I go into LinkedIn and have a chance to interact with other professionals, and maybe they're facing challenges that day or whatever else. So the aspect of support of that we get there is really something. I even feel at times like if some of the folks I interact with regularly, like maybe for a day or two, I didn't see them, we would check on each other. So you develop bonds beyond essentially just in terms of learning, but more in terms of support, which I think, especially in our world today, is very helpful and much needed.
Yeah, I mean, we're so connected. I mean,
Yeah,
you're in Dubai. I'm in Georgia in the United
yeah,
States, right? Like, and who would have thought? Who would have
yeah,
thought a year ago, 2 years ago, we would ever have met
yeah,
this way? Like, we've never met in person, right?
yeah,
But technology brings people together. Some of the social media platforms, it's like almost like fake community. But
sure,
LinkedIn has really become, especially in the corporate sense,
yeah,
it's now the new water cooler, right? I mean,
yeah,
people standing around chatting, but it's no longer just your floor at work, right?
absolutely,
It's this entire huge community of individuals so that I can learn from you and what you're doing, and you can come and learn from me and what I'm doing, and others can observe it and level up. And so we all end up leveling up in our personal life, our professional life. It's I don't know. I've actually really, I don't know, fall in love is probably the wrong term, but I've really enjoyed seeing how LinkedIn has changed.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
way different than it used to be, right? So,
Absolutely. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn for a really long time, but up until this past year, primarily, just use it as a means to ingest news about either people or the industry.
yep.
Maybe use it for recruiting mostly, but not much beyond that. But I think, through the past year, at least that I've been engaged in, it's truly transformed way beyond that. And funny enough is like even within the boundaries of the organization, especially if you're working in a large company, the
Hmm.
reach that you have even within the company becomes surprising in terms of how far and deep you go. Sometimes I meet colleagues, even from different offices or even in the same office. They know me from LinkedIn, even though we work in the same company, but it's just that on a day to day basis, you only work with some slice of the overall organization. But I think this helps you again, gain reach and build a network that otherwise would be very difficult to do, even in the context of your own organization as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you there. Um, I One of my kind of final questions is, and it's around LinkedIn. You mentioned it, where you used to be you'd go on there to recruit, right?
Yeah,
And that's people still do that. So there's a lot of people who are now on the hunt. They're on the hunt for a new role, either they are in a company and they want to change, or they even want to change within a company. What advice do you have around the power of LinkedIn for navigating career changes?
Sure. I think LinkedIn is definitely like a super powerful a platform. I think as with anything though, like knowing how to leverage it effectively is
Mhm.
key, and it's a skill, to be honest. I see people maybe on two ends of the spectrum. On one hand side, people are probably not leveraging enough or at all, and I think there's definitely a missed opportunity there. And then I see people on the other end of the spectrum, probably maybe over engaging without a clear plan,
Mhm.
which in some sense doesn't get you the results that you're looking for. So I think for me, maybe if I had one advice, is really, get on there, but have a plan, be focused. I think it's tempting given, the cost to apply for a particular job is minimal, and so is reaching out to many people is also minimal. But I think the people who have success, who are most effective in landing, let's say, their dream role or their next role, are really focused and disciplined about what they're going after. So they set, for example, like, here are my target list of companies, here are my target roles that I'm chasing, here's the network I need to build, and then they really plan their activities, their engagement, etc., against it. So for me, that's probably the tip that I would leave folks with, is really develop a plan and have the discipline to stick to it. It's easy to get distracted, but I think that to be effective, you need to have a plan.
So, if you could go back 10 years and talk to Omar from 10 years ago, what advice would you give him?
I think for me, I would say the main advice would be like prioritizing self-care. I think is probably the top tip. I think early in my career, as with anyone kind of starting their career, I was so focused on getting things done, and obviously that's where the hard work helps you move forward in your career. But I think I neglected to prioritize self-care, particularly from a physical standpoint.
Mhm.
Jobs are demanding physically, even though we're not doing like hard physical work, but the sitting, the minimal physical activity, I think it's really affected, my posture, my mobility, and along the way, at some point, it become unmanageable in terms of, pain and really inability to function. So it's been a long journey since then. I've learned the hard way how important self-care is, but really listen to your body in terms of what it needs, whether mentally, physically, spiritually, and make sure you're taking care of yourself. It's a long journey. It's not a sprint, and so pace yourself accordingly. That would probably be the only advice that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And one of our pillars is, there's two of them. One is your mindfulness. We talked about that earlier. That could be your spirituality, your mindset, etc. And the
Yeah.
last one is might. And might is
Yeah.
literally your physical center, right?
Yeah.
And when we talked in the green room before we started recording, I was like, yeah, I've been going since 5. Well, that's because I get up, I go to the gym, I come
Yeah.
home, do some things, then I go for a walk outside, and it's all that happens before I even take the kids to school.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so that I know that I'm in that right frame of mind for my day ahead. Right.
Absolutely. Makes a huge difference, and all these aspects kind of cascade and bleed in a positive way across the other aspects as well. Yeah.
So people are inspired by you. They want to get to know you. They want to understand a little bit more about how to get a hold of you. Is LinkedIn literally the best way to connect with you and really get on your newsletter and all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. Please visit my LinkedIn page, send me a connect request. More than happy to engage. Again, I'm passionate about helping others sort of unleash their leadership potential and develop their careers. So anything I can do in that respect, please don't hesitate to reach out. Yeah.
This has been great. I wrote down some notes, and those who listen to my podcast on the regular know I do this. I like to recap because I want to make sure people come away with some nuggets. Um, your willingness to move around really opened up doors and opportunities for you, and so being open to those kind of changes can really help propel you in your career. That your motto was, how do you learn something from everyone? That's really, really cool, because you can have a bad interaction with somebody, but you still have the opportunity to learn something from them. When you're a leader, there's like some three big challenges. Number one was time to develop self, and making sure you continue to invest in yourself and your development. That could be through having a mentor, a coach, reading, learning, etc. Number two, how do you receive that guidance? How do you ensure that you're open to receiving, feedback and change? And then three, making sure you have a diverse perspective. So your table of advisors that are around you should not be all like you. They should have different perspectives, so that you get that really well-rounded thought process on maybe how you move forward with a challenge. Those were like some really big things that I wrote down that really I took away from this. I appreciate your time, Omar. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with Might in Motion and the audience.
Most welcome, Mariana. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.